Hello everyone and welcome to day 9 of our blog series looking at reflections from Rowan Williams' latest book, Candles in the Dark. He's entitled today's reflection, At the Still Centre, and he bases that on some thoughts on relationships and expectations, and also with reference to Jesus' ascension. So the timeline is a bit ahead of itself, but it encompasses Lent and Easter and some thoughts on that as well. In the current pandemic, and maybe for some of you in normal times past, our experience of life can be quite scary, worrying, confusing, pretty thought-provoking at times. We worry over all sorts of things: relationships, health, our own or others, finance, our own or others, the past, the present, the future even, and of course COVID. And also we concern ourselves with our national obsession, the weather. Sometimes we apply weather metaphors to life itself. We can worry if a storm in relationship is going to blow away all we have worked hard to create, or is a flood going to carry away all that we hold most dear? Maybe it's not always quite as extreme or dramatic as that, but more like a vague anxiety in our minds that we can't quite put our finger on, or a niggling concern that won't go away or be reconciled. Quite often, life is like an endless race going nowhere. Very busy, but not leading to any great fulfilment. Being of a certain age, I remember the American singer Neil Sedaka, who I think is still with us, and I bet you never thought you'd hear his name in one of these blogs. He wrote a beautiful song called Going Nowhere, detailing how people who were poor, vulnerable or lonely struggled to find meaning in their lives, in the midst of a daily struggle to survive. And maybe, in one sense, that's true for most of us at one time or another. We worry, we concern ourselves both with our own situation and with that of others. We want life to be right for people. Maybe this resonates with you particularly over this last year or so. So how great then would it be to find what Rowan Williams calls the still centre? To live securely in our lives, grounded by Jesus as our anchor. Psalm 62 calls this resting easy in God. In our Tuesday night Lent group that Nick Jarrett Kerr and I lead, we looked last week at resting easy and in and with Jesus, coming to a quiet place and resting a while, where Jesus puts nothing onerous on us, but where his yoke is easy and his burden is light, grounded in his new law of love and grace, not the previous excess ritual or dogma. The disciples must have felt their own concerns and disorientation around the time of Jesus' ascension into heaven. Jesus had told them, advised them that he was returning there, but they were full of those anxieties, doubts and insecurities, potentially losing their Lord and mentor. One of them indeed asked, "What shall we do now, Lord?" Those disciples who were actually present at the ascension probably did not realise or understand what they were actually witnessing. Not only was it a physical return to heaven, but Jesus was returning to reclaim his place of glory and authority at the right hand of God. This was the next stage in Jesus' own story. He was not being kicked upstairs to the boardroom into a heavenly retirement. This was a new ministry for all believers in him, in heaven, to give us grace and to intercede for us. He was returning home to prepare a place for us, leaving the Holy Spirit in his place on earth with his disciples and subsequently with all of us. The Holy Spirit lives in the Christian heart, helps us to know the love of God, and helps us know that Jesus himself had overcome death and suffering. Indeed, after the confusion and concern of the ascension, Luke's Gospel, chapter 24, verse 50, describes the ascension as follows. When he had led them out to the vicinity of Bethany, he lifted up his hands and blessed them. And while he was blessing them, he left them and was taken up to heaven. Then they worshipped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy, and stayed continually at the temple praising God. So after all their initial insecurities and concerns, Jesus had made things right for his disciples. He had reassured them of his continuing presence with them, even if not physically. Jesus was and is physically gone but spiritually alive, and he is, as Rowan Williams puts it, a life that floods the entire universe. Another weather metaphor. Jesus is our anchor in stormy seas, raging torrents. He calms them and brings us to tranquil waters, for in the distractions of our daily lives, he is our quiet and still centre, who will never leave us in the midst of all life's tumult, worries and noise. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. Have a good week as well, and much love to you all, and God bless. Bye-bye.